Hello, my name is Jacqueline Smochek, and today I'm going to be talking about the Gifted and Talented Development Plan for Ryan C., a high school student from Wacomico County, Maryland. The first element I would like to talk about in the development plan is the candidate's background and the selection process. Ryan is a 16-year-old student attending public high school. He has one half-sister who is older than him, who is a teacher at the same high school. He is also the product of two remarried parents. In terms of the selection process, he is a very extremely modest student. When he was asked to participate in this field study, his first instinct was to suggest somebody else. Not because he didn't think he was smart enough, but because he automatically wanted to give credit to another student who he felt was better qualified than him, which made me want to choose him even more because he's so modest in his gifts and talents. Further reasons he was chosen as the gifted and talented candidate for me was he does participate in all advanced placement courses from English to history, his sciences, and his math, so all of the core classes. He also scored extremely high on all of his high school assessments, including PARC, which is the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers, his HSAs in Government and Biology, which stands for High School Assessments. Also, his RI, or reading inventory, which measures Lexile, was extremely high, well into the college level. So, we know that he has a good understanding for words and context. Also, he is extremely talented in the arts, specifically art. He thoroughly enjoys it, whether it's embedded into his classes or just on his own. He's always looking for something to further his talent. And finally, he's not uncomfortable taking the lead, and he will help others with group projects as well as offer input into what the groups should be doing. So the first thing I did with Ryan after I procured the testing data from our coordinator was set up a time to go over these scores with Ryan to see if he had even seen any of these scores before. He saw some of them, but didn't really get a chance to review what everything meant. So that's what we did first. In his ELA, which English Language Arts Park assessment, he scored exceeding expectations, a 5 out of 5. He got an 817 out of 850 overall, which is well above the school average, the district average, and the state average as well. In reading, he got a 74 out of 90, which again, 5 out of 5. And in writing, he scored a 50 out of 60, which is extremely good considering, he does enjoy writing it so much. In all those areas, again, above school, district, and state averages. His math park, even though it's not one of his favorite subjects, he still scored extremely well, having a strong understanding of algebra and algebra 2 skills. He got a 772 out of 850. For his reading inventory, he scored a 1653, which is in the advanced level of reading. He is in the 99th percentile, and which is well into the college level. Also, his government and biology HSA scores were at the advanced level, at government being 478 and HSA being at 462. When I went over these results with the student, he was on par with his results. He didn't really have any shocking information. What he was really interested in looking at were his scores from middle school and elementary school. He was never given those scores before, so he wanted to take some time to go over scores from the past. As he was able to tell as well, his scores were always and continue to be above average. The next area I would like to discuss is the behavioral characteristic chart. After I completed the data on the student, we met and discussed the top characteristics that we found, as well as some of the areas that had lesser point value. His top areas were learning skills and leadership skills, followed by creativity, and then finally motivational. In terms of his learning skills and leadership skills, he does demonstrate the highest level of talent in those areas and shows them on a daily basis. Ryan would be very successful leading a group and coming up with those creative ways to solve problems. He would also benefit from being given the opportunity to incorporate those creative skills into his other classes besides art in order to showcase those multiple intelligences. We discussed how in our English class, we did Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences quite often. So he was, very used to showing those skills as often as possible. Also, he does know how to be an expressive leader to his group members, but he doesn't be bossy or pushy with them, which makes them want to work with him. Ryan also has a very curious mind, going above and beyond what is required to gain as much knowledge on a topic as possible. He does not pinhole himself into one way of thinking or doing things. His ideas are always more complex rather than simple. In terms of his lowest skill set, which was motivational, we did discuss how sometimes he can lose motivation, specifically in art, because the projects are too simple. He is a very good artist, so when he's limited to, art one or art two, he doesn't get to express that full skill set. We did talk about going into some sort of VPA program or outside school program that would allow him to expand on those gifts and talents and go into something like painting or sculpting, which he does have an interest in. The next time Ryan and I met, we discussed his modified social coping questionnaire. After he filled out the information and I scored the questionnaire, we did meet to discuss and review the top characteristics found. He did score between 50 and 70% with all of his topics, suggesting that he would use positive reinforcement on his gifts and talents. He may not fully recognize his potential, even though he excels in school. So, like I said, he did score primarily between 50 and 66% to be more precise, showing that his emotional results would benefit from positive emotions like happiness or contentment and positive interest rather than negative things like anxiety, fear, failure, or sadness. Focusing on positive enforcement or constructive criticism will result in positive actions in the classroom that will create a positive rapport for role models, and also it will help us remain positive as instructors. Doing this will make him more self-aware in recognizing his own gifts and talents, and he will truly understand that he has the ability to do great things. These elements would also extend into the community and life events so that he can carry these things on with him as he moves on to college and eventually his life after college. The next time Ryan and I met, we discussed the My Way expression style inventory. So once again, after the student filled out the questionnaire and I scored it, we met to discuss the top characteristics as well as the lesser valued characteristics. His top areas were written, oral, service, and artistic. Written being his highest at 19, specifically in the areas of writing stories, writing for a newspaper, and writing an essay, followed by his oral skills, which were discussing ideas, talking about projects, or discussing research with others. Next was his service ability, which included, pretty much a well-rounded score across the board with helping in the community, helping others, supporting causes, helping fundraising, or collecting food to help others. His last one was in the artistic realm for drawing pictures, making sculptures of a character, or painting a mural. When looking at his top areas, it wasn't surprising because Ryan has expressed particular interests in writing and artistry. Um, desiring to research the variety of topics and ideas, and a love for these elements throughout the entire time I've known him. He not only talks about his enjoyment for these things, but he actively strives to get better at these skills each day, particularly when he assigns himself projects to do to further enhance his skills in those areas. Also, he not only excels in writing, but does even better when he is able to include his artistry, like drawing or sculpting, within his assignments, which is why he benefits from the subject areas that includes multiple intelligences into their curriculum. He was surprised to see oral being a top category, but when he looked at the particular categories that he scored high on, the elements of the oral presentations weren't what he really expected. It was more along the lines of being able to discuss with his peers and being part of a group and discussing assignments and ideas. So once we went over that, he became, much more agree or in agreement with the results for oral. Looking into the interview questions, I was able to make further suggestions into his development. First being his lack of motivation, specifically as it pertains to art. That's where we ended up talking about the VPA program, which is the Visual and Performing Arts Gifted program within the school. And he did express his desire to find out more about that area and perhaps apply to it this year. We also discussed maybe looking for something in the community that would further enhance those skills so that his motivation for art wouldn't die out completely and he would be challenged in that subject area. Also, we talked about his absent-mindedness of turning in work due to it wanting to be perfect. For those areas, we created a portion of the development plan designed for time management, group planning, and self-scheduling so that he wouldn't lose sight of due dates and lose the point value just because he was trying to perfect something in order to get it done. We also focused on looking at getting him some opportunities for revision instead of, not doing anything additional to his work. Also setting some personalized goals as well as, avoiding that distraction and additional study techniques that might be valuable to him. Based on the overall information gathered from all the assessment data and questionnaires, I was able to produce a talent development plan catered to his specific needs that would have the following considerations. The first being acceleration of courses and enrichment opportunities. In terms of the acceleration of courses, we would want him to benefit from the continued placement in those AP advanced placement classes, as well as potentially dual enrollment in a college during his senior year. We would also want to provide options for online or distance learning with those AP courses for gifted differentiation, as well as access to AP tests that would potentially give him college credit. Also providing alternative learning or independent study opportunities for coursework that is more complex or analytical, as well as independent. Providing opportunity to test out of a subject area for credit would also be an opportunity we would want to provide for him so that he can focus on some of his other gifts and talents. And finally, we want to promote self-learning through a variety of presentation options rather than just one singular option for everything he does in class. Some of the enrichment opportunities that we wanted to get Ryan involved in would be, like we suggested before, an enrollment in a VPA program, which again is Visual and Performing Arts. We do have a program like that at school, and it would not only promote but also advance the students' artistic abilities. We would also want to provide internship opportunities or shadow experiences to narrow down potential career opportunities that he's interested in. We also want to provide those leadership opportunities within the community in terms of service or community projects like, collecting money for a church or another organization, as well as other opportunities for community service within the school. Also, we would want to allow the student to complete workshops or seminars in areas of interest in and out of school, so that he can again further enhance those writing and artistic skills that he really wants to focus on. And finally, in terms of his math and sciences, we would want to provide access to programs such as Khan Academy, which further enhance those more advanced math and science skills. Next, we want to focus on some emotional and motivational activities and strategies for Ryan. Some of the more emotional activities that we would want to focus on is getting to those feelings through an expression of art, music, poetry, literature, and even dance or theater. We would also want to express emotions through artistic outlets like the ones just mentioned that would showcase the student's personality. We would also want to look at real life scenarios within the community and around the world to look at his ethical and moral background, as well as his emotional responses to those categories. And then look at his own self judgment on his personal feelings and motivations, and finally, those essential life goals. We would also want to identify emotions with himself as well as others, and look at them within the classroom setting as well as outside in the community to see how they affect him both psychologically and physically. And then finally, we would want to identify any peer pressure that's going on within the classroom and recognize how it is influencing himself as well as the others around him. Looking at some of those motivational activities and strategies that would get him focused more on his lack of turning in work for perfectionism, we would want to set some personal learning goals with his interests to connect to the world around him so that he can see the value in what he's doing. We also want to focus on the understanding of material rather than memorizing material so that he carries things with him that go beyond art and writing and history and take him into a well-rounded area of knowledge. Also, we want to focus on creating assignments that are designed to suit an interest or current events. Again, looking at things like multiple outlets to do projects would be very beneficial for Ryan. Also, we want to develop those techniques for time management so that he's not focused on that perfectionism as much as, being able to get the task done in the time frame it needs to be done so he's not losing points because he needs it to be perfect. Also, we want to set specific study strategies and discussion strategies to brainstorm with other students as well as the teacher on how to avoid those distractions in the classroom. Within the development plan, we also want to look at a range of support services and perfectionism support interventions that Ryan would be able to utilize within the classroom as well as in the community and as he goes further on into college. Some of those support services would include having that access to a guidance counselor or gifted talented support teacher or even a mentor teacher that he feels comfortable talking with in order to provide and help him in assistance with those issues that are arising due to his placement in AP or gifted programs, VPA programs, accelerated college programs, things like that. Also, we would want to have scheduled and requested meetings available between his classroom teachers and gifted support teachers to review and support the ideas within the development plan, as well as the addition of strategies that are presented in the gifted and talented development plan to cater his needs as he develops and grows throughout time. Some of the perfectionism support interventions that we would want to focus on is looking at that intellectual and personal growth, understanding that mistakes are part of a growth process and a learning process, and that things can be revised. It doesn't have to be perfect right off the bat. Also, we want him to be a part of a student-centered learning environment so he doesn't get caught up in that too much of an independent mindset where he doesn't go to anybody for help. We want him to be able to focus on going to the teacher or other students for those opportunities. Also, we want to focus on the process of learning rather than having a perfect score or performance. And, that would also coincide with having that student-centered learning environment, being able to discuss your ideas with other students or the teacher in order to get the most out of what you're doing. We would also want to choose and create a plan for some realistic goals for educational and career options, picking out, certain programs or colleges that he wanted to go into early so that we can look at his viable options for joining those institutions. We would also want to be able to engage with other students to discuss concerns and frustrations in terms of gifted and talented students. We want to also be able to have an open conversation about realistic goals and expectations and have the student be involved in more of those self-evaluations, so that they are really focused and understand what they need to work on and what they need to expand on. The last area of the development plan that we wanted to focus on was the community and school service opportunities. We would definitely want to allow Ryan the opportunity for learning opportunities with groups that have real needs within the community, so he feels like his time is being valued and he feels like he's making an active contribution to the community as well as himself. We also want him to look at becoming involved in those enrichment clubs and groups at school or in the community to enhance the knowledge of his potential career goals and personal interests, such as the writing and art areas. We would also want him to look at considering some summer programs or camps that involve student interest or community involvement. We talked about a really great one within our school called Destination Imagination, which is a group that throughout the year they work on this huge project that they get to go present in, Nashville, Tennessee or Arizona, places where they can meet with other people of their particular interests to gain knowledge on an area of involvement. And finally, we want to set goals for his future through experience opportunities with businesses or agencies in the community that are willing to take on younger students to help them realize their goals and gifts and talents as they grow up. So after meeting with Ryan and looking at this development plan, he really was on board with getting to do any of these opportunities and strategies that we came up with, specifically those that were designed around his writing and art. Things like the VPA program or a creative writing class or program after school. Also, things like joining a drama club, he was not opposed to doing. He was very open to these considerations, and we have a starting point to go off of if this were ever to be put into motion. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, please let me know.